Last week we lost our first sheep. Here's what happened. So why am I making this video? I'm pretty sad about what happened. This is obviously a really sad subject. If you follow me, you know I don't have a large flock. We really only had 3 ewes and we lost one this week. So why am I making this video? Well, I feel like it makes sense to talk about stuff like this when things don't go the way you plan. And there's something to be said about being honest when things don't work out or when the reality is really sad. I think that there's something to be said about being honest when things are sad. Also, this is a topic that I would appreciate seeing more of as a consumer, as someone who watches a lot of YouTube and consumes a lot of content online about sheep and regenerative practices and natural approaches to raising animals and homesteading. I wish I had more videos like this. So at the end of the day, hopefully this helps somebody. I wish I would have seen some video like this. I hope it helps somebody who is dealing with something similar, and maybe it can prevent some loss and heartache on somebody else's part, because I know it's definitely going to help me in the future with my flock. So this whole story took place over the course of 5 days, and I'll tell you what happened on each of those days. So last Tuesday, my wife noticed, and she said, "Hey, Winnie, our sheep, is looking really skinny." And she definitely was. And I was really worried at that moment. I had been in contact with a vet that I had planned to come out in the fall for sort of just a wellness visit, but I said, "Hey, let's bump it. Let's get it earlier if we can." So that was on Tuesday, and she said she could come out on Thursday. So that's how Tuesday ended. We had a skinny sheep, but she was still active. She didn't act sick. She eats really well out here in the forest. They all do, but just to kind of overkill it, we moved her to a new paddock with a lot more grass. So on Wednesday, the very next day after we noticed our girl was real skinny, we moved her to this paddock with our 2 other ewes. And there's plenty of grass here, and Winnie was actually eating really well. Over here, she, aside from looking very skinny, she did not act any differently. She had a great appetite. She was eating really well and taking care of herself. And as you can see, there's, plenty of grass here. It's a good paddock, really. So Wednesday ended with her looking sick but acting fine. Well, then Thursday came and the vet came over. At that point, Winnie had basically gone down. She would get up to eat, but she was not interested in foraging a lot. When our other 2 ewes were, the vet came over, and within a second she said, "Yep, she's got bottle jaw," which is essentially, if you Google that, you can see it's basically like a gullet that sheep get. And I don't know a ton about the science behind that, but basically it's a standard, parasite overload kind of a thing. And the vet said under normal circumstances what we would do is, test and try to figure out really what she possibly has. But in a case that was that severe, she gave her what she said were 2 shots. She told me what the shots were. To be honest, I forgot. She said 1 shot was everything but the kitchen sink, and then the next shot was the kitchen sink. It's kind of a full wipeout. So the idea was to kill the parasites that were in her. The vet said that would take about 3 days for them to, die and get flushed out. And then within a week, she should start acting differently. And within about 2 weeks, she should start looking differently. And the vet said, there's a good chance she could make it, which left me hopeful, which truthfully, I don't know if the vet was telling the truth or not at that point. But I don't really care, because I appreciated it was more hopeful than sad news at that point. It would have been really sad to know that she was just dying for those 2 days when I didn't know. So in talking with the vet, again, this is on Thursday, talking with the vet, she was asking some questions, and I was asking her questions, saying, well, what about my other two ewes? They were on the same paddock. Surely they have the same thing. Do we need to deworm them? And so we checked the whites of the eyes on the ewes. We checked for a few other health indicators. The ewes look pretty darn healthy right now, and the vet said, no, they're actually fine. And she started inquiring, more about this ewe Winnie, and why she's sick. And basically when I said, like, oh well, she had triplets, and the vet said, bam, that's it. She looked like, she never looked big. Like I have another ewe that had a single, and she got pretty big right after we weaned, but Winnie never really bounced back from that. And the vet said, likely it was the triplets that just drained her. And she gave 3 really, really good lambs. Like our 3, and we got 3 rams from her. This is only her second year. She twinned her first year, tripleted her second year. Aside from the fact that it's just sad to lose any sheep, she was a really productive ewe, but she just kind of gave it all to her kids, or lambs, I guess it was what it would be. So that's Thursday. Friday comes along, and just like the vet said, Winnie was on the ground most of that day, not really interested in eating a lot. I brought her some alfalfa pellets just to see if she would eat from my hand, and she'd have one bite, and really just kind of, that was it. And so that was very sad to see her in that state. And so there was some time I, just kind of sat with her, pet her on the head and the neck, and just tried to feed her and give her water, and she just wouldn't really take it. But that's what the vet said. The vet said to expect that, so I was not worried at that point. So that was Friday, and then Saturday was the day that she passed, and most of Saturday looked exactly the same. She was down. She took a few bites out of my hand, but did not move much that entire day. And I had no reason to expect her to die. She was looking like just how the vet said she would look. And we left to go do a little family activity on Saturday. We came back probably around 7 o'clock, and she looked dead. She was still breathing, but she looked absolutely dead. And that's when I knew. And I called the vet at that moment, not necessarily to know what to do, but rather to kind of just get some confirmation. I mean, I don't know. I don't actually know why I called the vet, but I did. And the vet basically said, yeah, well, in North Carolina, it's a constant battle between the bugs and the ruminants, or all animals, and the worms won this time. And she said some things that were nice to hear, that even experienced animal keepers deal with this, but it was really hard. I felt like a failure, and it was really hard to deal with. I thought I got all my crying out when it happened, but the vet did advise me to basically give her a painkiller shot, which the vet left me with some medicine, and so I gave her a shot right under her armpit that basically was a pain reliever. And within an hour after that shot, she was dead. And it was sad, obviously. So during that time, before she died, I said my goodbye. I remember my 5-year-old, we have a 5-year-old daughter, she came out and kind of said her goodbye. And then the bloat set in. You could kind of see her stomach was expanding. I don't want to be too graphic, you could see it expanding out of her butt, basically, so that, she wasn't just down and out, she was dead. So now I'm dealing with the fact that I have a dead sheep on the property, and so I don't know what was right to do, maybe deal with it in the morning, but I was just kind of a wreck, so I just started digging right then. And when it got too dark, got a flashlight and just kept digging. When I felt the hole was big enough, I went inside and talked to the kids about it, and came back out after the kids were asleep, and my wife came with me, and we basically hoisted the sheep up into a wheelbarrowed her over to the spot where we put her down and put her in the ground, I should say, and we buried her. And I will say that the best form of comfort was actually doing that, was digging a grave for her and being the one to put her in that. It gave me a sense of that I was providing for her even in death. This is where we buried her. There's a lot of stuff on top of it that's all shredded cardboard and paper. The reason why it's there is because we had a little service on Sunday, which was the day after, she died, and we put her in the ground, where basically we kind of mixed up some seeds that we had on hand, some wildflowers, some grass, some buckwheat, and kind of just cast it over the spot, and then to make sure the seed actually had a good chance of growing, we put the shredded paper over there. So today it doesn't look super pretty, but when these start sprouting, I think it'll be really nice to have this patch of the white buckwheat flowers and the wild flowers for pollinators and stuff. It'll just be a nice way to remember her. So I mentioned at the beginning of this that the reason I wanted to make this video is because I hope it provides context for what this actually looks like. I'm part of a lot of Facebook groups that talk about sheep and raising sheep, and people talk about death. I'd be naive to think that death was never going to be a part of raising sheep. We have, processed sheep, but it's different when they die under your watch. And so what I wanted to do is really just provide a little bit of what I'm changing, where my mindset's gone, and what I want to do differently. First and foremost, I wanted to share the fact that this happened over a 5-day period, right? That's really, really fast, and that's kind of a stereotype with sheep, that one day they could be fine, the next day they can be dead. Well, in my case, it wasn't overnight, but it was very fast to me. So a takeaway from me is I really want to spend more time with my sheep in a mindful setting. I know a little bit more what to look for, and I know what to do in more cases like this. Another thing that I'd like to do is really get on a schedule with my vet. There's a lot to be said about local expertise. I started raising sheep in Utah. You know how big of a problem parasites are there? Not very big. Our problem is rain and not getting enough forage for our sheep. But parasites are not one of our top problems out here. North Carolina, absolutely. They're absolutely a big problem. And that's something I need to be more realistic about. So I'm going to really lean hard into my vet's expertise of what to administer and when. The advantage is that I do have a small flock, so I don't have to drench everybody on a schedule. I can still administer medicine on a needs basis kind of a thing, but there's something to be said about leaning into the local expertise, and it's a vet, so it's medical expertise as well. Something else that I think I'm going to do, she had triplets, 3 really, really great rams. 2 of them I think were stud quality, and one of them I've already sold, and he's going to be a stud for a local somebody nearby. And I was going to process the other one, but I think I'm going to keep him now and have 2 stud rams for at least for the little bit, and see if I can get more of her genetics back into my line, because she was a beautiful ewe, really productive, just such a sweet personality, and I feel like that's something I can do to honor her. And then finally, this is the biggest thing, is that I really feel like I'm saying goodbye to my idealistic self. When I started doing sheep, one of the biggest reasons I chose sheep over any other animal is it seemed like they were so self-sustaining, and I was looking forward to caring for an animal that also took care of me, right? I just got bit. Sheep have a reputation of being able to take care of themselves, right? And I had this kind of naive, idealistic view that I just needed to give them grass, minerals, and water. and that's all they need. And in Utah, that actually might have been true, but I'm just at a place now where I'm lucky to have so much forage for them, but I really need to not be so naive about that kind of thing. Like, I have this idealistic view that I'm never gonna, I'm never gonna do antibiotics, I'm never going to drench, I'm never gonna deworm, I'm only gonna do apple cider vinegar and natural approaches. And now I'm just kind of at a point where it's like, is that worth it? Is it worth it to live like that, or is it more worth it to save your sheep? And if it comes down between those two choices, I'm going to save my sheep every time. And that's not to say, I was using kind of harsh language. My attitude was never, I'm never going to do those things. It was just I wasn't in the mindset where I need to look at preventative measures like that. If a vet advised something, I was never against it, right? But now I'm realizing I need to kind of say goodbye to that idealistic, naive past self and take care of these animals a little bit better. In my faith, there's the analogy of the Good Shepherd, and the Good Shepherd is one that will leave the 99 and go to the one. And it was really hard because the one, in my case, was lost, and she didn't get saved, right? And so that's really sad. But the mindset that I have now is honor the one by taking care of the 99. So I'm really, really invigorated to just do a better job, to be more realistic, to be more serious about this whole thing, and really just want to honor the fact that, I had a good sheep, and there's a lot to celebrate about that. But at the end of the day, animals die. I'm trying not to let myself get too down on, what I could have done. Obviously, I'm learning from it. I'm trying not to get bogged down on things that I can't change in the past. So if you watch this whole video, I'm realizing this actually is a long one. I appreciate it. This is not something that, this is different from most of my videos, right? So I appreciate your time on the channel, and next time it won't be so sad, I promise.